There is a moment that comes quietly in later life when you realize the misery you fear is not caused by age itself, but by what slowly disappears if you are not paying attention and not adjusting with awareness. It is not the gray hair or the slower steps or the changing mirror that creates the heaviness you sometimes feel when the house is silent. It is the absence of structure, the absence of connection, the absence of feeling useful, respected, mentally alive, and emotionally anchored in something beyond yourself. Old age becomes hollow not because time passed, but because meaning slipped away in small, unnoticed increments. When meaning fades, days stretch long and thin, nights grow heavier, and even small tasks begin to feel strangely disconnected from purpose. The truth that experts and elders who have lived through it quietly admit is simple but unsettling. Aging well is not automatic, and it does not happen simply because you survived long enough to reach it. It requires the steady presence of certain psychological and practical anchors that hold your inner world in place. Without those anchors, something inside begins to dim, not dramatically, but gradually, like a room losing light at dusk. With them, something steadies, and the same years that might have felt empty begin to feel intentional and inhabited. The first anchor is a purposeful daily rhythm that gives shape to otherwise shapeless time. When you wake without a reason to rise beyond habit or obligation, the hours can blur together in a way that subtly disorients the mind. The nervous system depends on anticipation, and the brain depends on orientation to maintain emotional stability. A day that contains even one deliberate act creates forward motion and psychological grounding. It may be tending to a garden, walking at the same hour each morning, writing a page of reflection, calling someone every Sunday without fail. It may be organizing old photographs, preparing a thoughtful meal, feeding birds at dawn, or reading at a set time each evening. The scale of the activity does not matter nearly as much as the predictability and intention behind it. Routine stabilizes identity because it tells your brain that you are still participating in life rather than drifting through it passively. Without rhythm, time becomes shapeless, and shapeless time slowly erodes mood and self-perception. You begin to feel unnecessary, not because you are unnecessary, but because nothing in your day reflects your deliberate presence. The second anchor is physical engagement that keeps your body feeling like an ally rather than a burden you must manage carefully. This is not about performance or comparison or chasing the strength you once had decades ago. It is about gentle, consistent movement that maintains circulation, balance, coordination, and confidence. When movement stops entirely, capability declines faster than most expect, and that decline often arrives quietly. With reduced capability comes hesitation, and with hesitation comes gradual withdrawal from experiences that once felt simple. Small daily habits preserve not only muscle, but also self-trust and psychological resilience. Stretching in the morning, walking even a short distance, lifting light resistance, practicing balance near a counter can reinforce competence. These actions are not exercises for vanity. They are rituals of continuity between who you were and who you are becoming. When your body responds even modestly, you feel less fragile and more stable in your own skin. Physical vitality and emotional resilience are intertwined in ways that science continues to confirm. If one deteriorates entirely, the other soon follows, and energy drains in both directions. The third anchor is emotional connection, which is often underestimated until it quietly disappears from daily life. Isolation rarely announces itself loudly. It arrives gradually and almost politely. Calls become less frequent, invitations thin out, conversations shorten, and you tell yourself others are simply busy. And often they are busy, but busyness does not replace continuity of connection. Humans regulate emotionally through interaction, and the nervous system calms when it feels recognized and remembered. Being asked for your opinion, being consulted, being included in even small decisions stabilizes your internal world. Without at least one meaningful relational thread, the mind turns inward too often and too intensely. Reflection then risks becoming rumination, and memory risks becoming longing rather than integration. A single consistent connection can anchor your sense of belonging more effectively than many superficial interactions. It is not the number of people around you that protects you from loneliness, but the reliability of one or two genuine bonds. The fourth anchor is mental stimulation and active curiosity that keeps the mind expanding rather than contracting. When novelty disappears completely, the brain begins to conserve energy in ways that feel like dullness or fading alertness. Many people accept cognitive shrinking as inevitable, yet stagnation accelerates what curiosity could slow or reshape. Learning does not need to be dramatic or academic to be powerful. Reading a new genre, solving puzzles, journaling thoughts, asking questions about new technology instead of dismissing it can stretch mental pathways. Curiosity tells your brain that growth remains possible even in later decades. Without challenge, days repeat mechanically, and repetition without engagement breeds a sense of invisibility. But when the mind is invited to stretch even slightly, a spark of alertness returns. You feel attentive rather than adrift, and present rather than fading into routine. Cognitive engagement preserves more than memory. It preserves optimism and narrative continuity. The fifth anchor is dignity and self-worth, which are psychologically fragile in environments that subtly sideline older voices. You may notice that people speak slower to you, assume less capacity, or make decisions without seeking your perspective. If these signals are internalized, identity can contract in ways that feel difficult to articulate. Dignity, however, is reinforced internally and defended relationally through participation and self-advocacy. When you insist on being included in decisions, when you state your preferences calmly and clearly, you protect your self-concept. Without dignity, even good physical health feels incomplete and emotionally insufficient. The absence of respect erodes the spirit faster than many physical limitations ever could. Maintaining self-worth is not arrogance. It is psychological survival and self-continuity. Accumulated experience is not obsolete simply because culture moves quickly. Perspective remains valuable even when pace slows, and wisdom retains weight even in quieter rooms. The sixth anchor is the feeling of being needed in some meaningful, realistic way. There is a distinct ache that arises when no one relies on you at all, and it can feel like quiet redundancy. Throughout earlier life, you were needed for work, for family decisions, for emotional support, for daily logistics. When those demands recede entirely, identity can feel untethered and slightly displaced. Research consistently shows that perceived usefulness predicts emotional well-being strongly in later years. The nervous system stabilizes when it senses that your presence affects something beyond your own internal experience. This does not require grand responsibility or heavy obligation. Caring for a pet, mentoring someone younger, volunteering occasionally, checking on a neighbor, offering guidance when asked can restore direction. Being needed shifts attention outward and interrupts self-contained mental loops. Without outward intersection, days risk becoming repetitive cycles of internal reflection. When experts and elders describe miserable old age honestly, they rarely describe catastrophe. They describe gradual subtraction that accumulates quietly over months and years. Subtraction of structure, subtraction of movement, subtraction of conversation, subtraction of curiosity. Subtraction of respect, subtraction of usefulness, subtraction of participation in meaningful exchange. Misery is rarely dramatic. It is cumulative and layered. The opposite is also cumulative and built slowly through deliberate addition. Add one modest routine that marks the day with intention and identity. Add 10 minutes of movement that reminds your body it is still capable of response. Add one consistent conversation that reinforces continuity and belonging. Add one new question each day that stimulates thought rather than resignation. Add one boundary that protects your dignity in conversation and decision-making. Add one place where you are needed and where your presence alters the outcome. Old age does not demand youth, reinvention, or dramatic transformation. It demands intentionality and steady participation in your own maintenance. Without these anchors, the mind drifts toward regret and rumination, interpreting stillness as decline. With them, the mind stabilizes around presence, engagement, and quiet contribution. The difference is not chronological age, but depth of involvement in your own days. If you feel a quiet heaviness settling in, interpret it not as destiny but as signal. Something foundational may be missing currently, not permanently. Foundations can be rebuilt slowly, one beam at a time, through deliberate choices. Aging with peace is not about eliminating decline or pretending change does not exist. It is about preserving meaning in ways that evolve alongside your body and circumstances. Meaning survives through structure, vitality, connection, curiosity, dignity, and usefulness. They are meant to be inhabited deliberately, with awareness of what sustains you internally. The power to restore what feels missing remains within reach through consistent, grounded action. Not through dramatic reinvention, but through small daily commitments that accumulate quietly. In that accumulation, life regains weight and warmth rather than thinning into monotony. When you guard meaning deliberately, later life can feel less like decline and more like refinement.